everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
Vince, guess what we're doing today?
We're having another installment of the multi-topic Extravaganza.
That's right, it's part 5 of round 3 of the multi-topic Extravaganza, and let's go ahead and get right into it, shall we, Vince?
All right.
Half an hour of answering your questions, and I think this probably is still not going to be the last installment of this round. There's so many questions. I think we'll probably do at least one more.
I like multi-topic Extravaganza. You know why?
What's that?
Because we don't have to come up with the topics.
It is a lot of fun, but I think we'll cut it off at 6 this time. I think we probably will do one more. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And our first question comes from Mr. E, who asks, when it comes to writing, what is something you would tell someone who is writing a story, in the superhero genre? Piece of advice, Vince.
A piece of advice? Well, have a character arc. I mean, have something that your character chooses to do. It's not just about having powers and hitting bad guys.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say do your level best not to just do another generic version of a superhero we all know already. It's difficult not to do that. It's hard to be totally original. Superheroes have been around forever. We have a whole bunch of them. But the whole, hey, here's my riff on Superman, here's my riff on Batman, it's been done to death. I mean, I think at this point, probably the best way to go is somewhat more traditional. Have a character with a power set or not a power set, however you want to do them, but give them a bad guy. And I think maybe the most important piece of advice is really focus on having kind of a charismatic villain.
Yeah.
Because those are missing in the most generic and worst modern superhero properties that people come up with is just a really good, solid guy you love to hate. Or woman you love to hate, but villain that you love to hate.
Or a sympathetic villain or something. I mean, that's
that's
a terrific point. I mean, a lot of those things that become too stereotypical are the heroes are just good guys and the villains are just bad guys and the villains are straight up bad guys.
And then it's just not creative enough. If you think about it, if you think about the superheroes that we love the most, how often do we, Vince, find ourselves talking about rogues galleries? I mean, all the time. Our heroes are to a degree defined by their villains.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important that you have that. That doesn't mean that you're going to have a great hero if you have a great villain, but I think it's a really good thing to keep in mind.
You know, the other day somebody said to me that they said DC has crap villains. They're all bad. And
what?
I said I don't think that's true. And he said, well, look at Superman and Flash. Who does Flash have? Reverse Flash? That's dumb. And what I said to him was, now, does DC really have crap villains, or are they just not as cool as the Batman's villains in the same universe? And he said, touche.
That's a terrific point.
I don't know. I like Superman villains. Why not?
I do too. But I don't think he has as good of a rogues gallery as Batman. I don't think Spider-Man has as good of a rogues gallery as Batman. We've talked about this. The problem is that Batman's just got an unmatched rogues gallery. I don't know how you beat some of those guys.
Batman and Superman are compared so often. It's just not fair to compare his villains to Bat villains.
The great thing about Superman, for me, of course, is that I love Lex Luthor almost as much as I love the Joker. So at least he's got one that I just, like, really, really latch on to.
I like the Parasite quite a bit.
Parasite's really interesting.
Neat.
Yeah?
We've gotten way off topic, but...
Yes, but I enjoyed every minute of it. Here we go. Tyler Thompson asks, who are your favorite arch enemies? Oh, okay, that's connected. And what role do you think arch enemies play in the world of comic book superheroes? And then in all caps, he says, "Please answer. I've been asking this question for years."
Wait, asking us or asking in general?
I'm not sure. If he's been asking us this question for years, I apologize if we've never answered it. So, our favorite arch enemies. I do feel like we've talked about that, but we'll do it again. And the role we think arch enemies play in the world of comic book superheroes. I think I did just to a degree answer this in saying that your arch enemies are going to be really important, I think, to a degree of defining your superhero, but also just in the entertainment value of whether or not I'm going to enjoy the story. I think that you've got to have a hero a villain that matches your hero. But as far as in a more in-canon sense,
I think arch enemies often become the person who's the exact opposite of that character. Now, I feel like the two big arch enemies for Batman, first of all, one's the Joker because he's the inversion of the style of Batman. Very laughing as opposed to the stoic and anger of Batman. Or stoicism, rather. But on the other side, you have somebody like Two-Face who represents the duality of Batman, not just the inverse of the character. I mean, you have the idea of the mask and no mask, and then you have the character or you have the idea of the character and then the man. So it's I feel like there are thematic reasons that characters become so important. And of course you have people like the Joker who make themselves the archenemy just because they're so...
It's deliberate on his end, and that's one of the things I love about the Joker and about the best Joker stories is that that's not somebody getting artsy with it in the writing. That's the Joker noticing something interesting and going and like being so intrigued by Batman, he's going to be the opposite of it. I've always found that really intriguing, and that's something that works with him because he's psychotic, and so you know he can get away with it. That's a terrific answer.
Another one is that the character who most evenly matches the person. So, and sometimes they're almost the exact same. I mean, look at Black Adam and Captain Marvel. They're just different in their approach of how to take care of bad guys, really.
I think sometimes you also have the villain that has a very similar background to the other character, or sometimes almost exactly the same, where they go through a lot of the same sorts of things, but then because of like either, and in a lot of times it's a nature versus nurture argument, right? Where either because of one big defining difference, or just their worldview is different to begin with, they go on into separate directions. Batman Begins, Ra's al Ghul and Bruce Wayne. You've definitely got that, where they both have kind of a tragic backstory, and then they both are with the League of Shadows, but then they have, of course, he's also running the League of Shadows, but you know what I mean. And then their answer to how to solve these problems are radically different. And then Bruce Wayne and Bane have a very similar thing too in Rises, because of the fact that they both were brought up in that same kind of thing, but then their tacks are very different because partly because one of them left. Because he didn't want to kill people, and then the other one was shoved out because he was already too extreme. So that's all really interesting.
I think another thing is that the hero and the villain's goals kind of cross paths. In the case of Lex Luthor and Superman, of course, Lex Luthor has a very big, sweeping, I'm trying to execute certain goals that Superman is trying to prevent. I mean, it's very classic comic book. It's very, this guy's trying to take care of this guy's crimes. So sometimes it's just about how much writers want to use the villain.
Yeah, and that's also about public perception with those two, because Lex Luthor is jealous of Superman. He wants to he wants the kind of respect that the people of Metropolis have for Superman, and Superman doesn't do it for that reason, but Lex does. And also, you have that really interesting version of Lex from like Lex Luthor, Man of Steel. I don't know if you've read that, but it's really good. You should. I'll let you borrow it at some point. Where you have the Lex who really believes that Superman is dangerous, and thinks that and has enough hubris that he thinks that he's the only person who can stop him. It doesn't matter that he hasn't done anything yet that makes him he needs to be stopped. It's that he's too powerful and he shouldn't have the power that he has.
That sounds cool.
And yeah, it's really great. We didn't answer who our favorite arch enemies are, but I think maybe we did in that discussion, because I think maybe I talked about some of mine.
The Thing and the Incredible Hulk. Because they're kind of nemesis for each other.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I suppose one's not necessarily an arch villain, but they are kind of enemies. They typically don't work together, so I'm going to say that. And Doctor Doom and Mr. Fantastic. I'm sensing a trend.
Yeah.
And of course, Two-Face and Batman. Leave me alone.
I like the kind of dichotomy that you get with somebody like Silver Surfer and Galactus, because Galactus isn't really a villain. But he ends up being a major antagonist, because after all, he's causing genocide just to stay alive, right? And you have he's kind of like an unintentional devil, because Silver Surfer has to make a deal with him to save his planet, and so he has to work for him, and then he finds a way to get away from him, and then he can't help but constantly be at odds with him all the time. That's such an interesting relationship, and they really are arch nemesis, even though we don't really talk about them that way all the time. So that's one I'm just going to throw out because I just thought of it and I think it's cool. But yeah,
I would agree.
Let's move on. Sokka616, hey Captain Vince. I've been reading Uncanny Avengers, and I'm liking it so far. Me too, quite good. I love Red Skull in that book. Let's steal Professor X's brain and then put it in my brain, and now I have superpowers. Fantastic. But it has really irked me that mutants are hated and feared. Why do you think mutants are so discriminated against? But if a human gets powered by accident, who then becomes comparable to a mutant, they aren't hated or feared. Can you please give me your thoughts on the mutant double standard in Marvel, as it is the one thing that takes away from my enjoyment of the X-Men franchise? I think the obvious go-to answer for this is X-Men and Marvel superheroes don't really cross-pollinate very well. Yeah. And I think Marvel's trying really hard to make it work now with putting, both on a team and with having Captain America go, oh yeah, maybe I should have been championing mutant rights all these years.
Oh, maybe I'm kind of a jerkbag.
Yeah, Marvel is addressing this now, and I kind of appreciate that they are, just because it's really interesting for storytelling, and I think Remender's doing some great stuff with that, and Bendis over on the X-Men side. But to actually answer the question, I just think that it's an unfortunate writing thing where you can't really have superpowered characters who didn't get them by being a mutant, and nobody minds that. I don't think it works, but it's always been there.
Yeah, I mean, they just decided back in the day, hey, let's make this all one universe. This would be really cool. And then they went, oh, we have a problem.
What's weird though is that Stan Lee started with that idea already of they're already gonna, or they're gonna be kind of interconnected before he started writing X-Men, I think, and so that's kind of weird to me. But in your mind, in reality, could that make any sense? That like if you were born with it, it's a problem, but if you got it later, people wouldn't hate and fear you. People wouldn't look at you as like a second-class citizen.
I feel like
because they're scared of you.
I feel like part of it is.
Wouldn't you still be scared of Captain America? Wouldn't you still be scared of Spider-Man?
Not necessarily. I feel like part of this is marketing. I feel like part of this within the continuity itself, within the universe. So Captain America was created and sold as a super soldier and the champion of American ideals. And then you have somebody like Iron Man, who is rich and controlled, and, well, presumably controlled. So regardless of whether or not, I mean, you can look at something like...
But Spider-Man's totally Rogan on his own.
Yeah, and people hated him for quite a long time.
Really good point.
So,
yeah, wow.
That's exactly where I was going with it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I feel bad for not having thought of it. That's obvious. Yeah, but great point.
So yeah, that's, I mean, if you think about it, somebody who just randomly develops powers when they hit puberty could be a severe danger to the community. But somebody who, let's say, maybe earns their powers, or somebody who maybe invents their own powers later on in life, is not necessarily doing it around everybody, and they feel like it's more trustworthy regardless of whether or not it's a huge national security risk. So,
wow, that's great. That's a really, really, really good point about Spider-Man. Spider-Man might as well be a mutant.
Yeah.
The way he's often treated.
And I feel like I've read something maybe in the Ultimate Universe where they're like, he's a mutant! No, he's not. So, he wears a costume.
Ultimate, I think, does a better job of it, just overall.
They're really trying to rectify some of that stuff right now, and it's not working, but they're trying really hard.
The Pulp 80s, do you think that comic book movies should stop being trilogies and go past the third installment? Because from what I've heard, The Amazing Spider-Man is already a planned trilogy set in stone, and I don't like that one bit. First of all, I haven't heard that. I've heard that lately that they've been talking more about maybe even doing some spin-off movies from Amazing Spider-Man and almost like making it like a film universe. So I kind of wonder if that's going to happen. To your point, though, I doubt very seriously if that franchise goes past 3 movies. They might do a couple spin-off movies. They might do a Venom movie and something like that. But I really would be very surprised if it went past 3. So what do you think? Should you do planned trilogies? And this is a blanket statement thing. I personally think it depends on the franchise. But do you think that we should stay with this planned trilogy idea, or that we should just see where it goes? Like,
I think you should only stick with a planned trilogy idea if you're going to make the movies regardless of whether or not people like them.
And I think it's better if you make them together. Yeah. When you can.
I feel
Donner had it right. I mean, he made the first major superhero movie, and he tried to make 1 and 2 together. I mean, we all know that it didn't really work out because he had issues with the Salkinds. But besides all that, I mean, like, he made 2 movies at the same time. Like, revolutionary practice. Worked gangbusters for Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah. I think they should stop trying to make film movie franchises. and or comic book movie franchises or whatever franchise, and just focus on making a good movie.
I think so too.
And then move on to the next one. I mean, either make these things together, make them with a plan, or make one movie and then say, well, people liked it enough, what do we have for a second?
Yeah, and it's completely understandable why this is so difficult to pull off, right? Because they cost so much. And so, you know, to say we're going to make... I mean, I think it was even a risk with Lord of the Rings. Good thing that worked out. But I think that, like, with superhero movies, it's difficult because they cost at least $150 million to make, most of them. And... you know, you don't want to just straight up do a setup movie, especially if it tanks and you don't get any more. I hate it when that happens. It drives me crazy, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
It's the most saddening thing in the world that everything is a setup for something that doesn't necessarily come into existence.
Yeah, I think the best compromise is absolutely what you're saying. Stop making just straight up introduction movies. I'm not saying don't do origin necessarily. I know that I have a tendency to complain about origin. It's not because I'm anti-origin, it's because most of the time it's not done right. I say don't do setup movies. Do a film that works great as its own story, whether you're telling the origin or not, whatever it is, but don't make it the kind of movie that I'm not going to appreciate much unless you make more of them.
Right.
Thank God they made another X-Men movie, right? I mean, like, you know, the first one's okay, but it's pretty much a setup movie. I mean, I always felt that way about it. I felt that way about it when I first saw it, and the next two is marvelous, so...
If you take this approach, I think you could make 4 movies, or more than 3.
Absolutely, I think so too.
So, yeah, just make a good movie, and then try to make another good movie that doesn't necessarily have to be spawned from the first one. I mean,
yeah,
it's just a sequel to the movie.
Or if you're pretty confident about it, and you're like, this is going to be a trilogy, make them together, or at least write them together. I don't mean they have to be filmed at the same time, but at least have a plan.
Yeah.
54 Ever Glorious. A common defense for the proposed plot conveniences and contrivances is that the film is open for interpretation. My question for you guys, for GNN, is simply, is that a valid defense, or are people just trying to defend a film they liked because they liked it? Where is the line between symbolism and subtlety and just simple poor writing? In my opinion, the open for interpretation defense can be applied to any film's contrivances and problems. Thanks, guys. Hope to hear back from you and keep up the good work. Thank you. Very good question.
I have a definitive answer.
Definitive answer. Go ahead.
It depends.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Yeah, it really depends on what you're talking about. Because I feel like sometimes people use that as an argument when it really doesn't apply. They say, well, it depends. No, it doesn't depend. You're adding things to the movie that are not there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not so proud to say this, but when Fantastic Four 2 came out, we had this giant discussion of how it could actually work. And Cap here said to me, but yeah, none of that's in the movie. I said, you're right, which means it's a flaw with the movie, but I'm saying that the idea itself wasn't stupid.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you on that movie, but a lot of those kinds of things, it becomes harder for me to deal with when it's obvious how you could have made it work.
Yeah.
Where intrinsically in the film, there it is, and you didn't expand it, you didn't run with it, and in fact, you made up something kind of stupid, so you didn't have to.
And sometimes I feel like you're just taking the easy way out.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you get to the end of Red State, and instead of having a big climax, you just have them chatting about it. I mean, you took the easy way out. I mean... and then you try to make it. And what happens when you do stuff like that? I haven't seen that movie, by the way. But when you do stuff like that, I feel like a lot of the time it's an attempt at making it hard for the viewers to complain. It's like let's put a little nugget in there so that people who really like the movie will defend us by saying, well, there it is, that's obviously what they're implying. Some things should be implied, and some things should be evident. And we would have to launch into a much more planned out kind of video with preconceived examples, I think, to really get into all that. But yeah, I feel like what you end up with is you get movies that really do have a lot of good
subtlety and subtext like he's talking about, that some people will say that that the film's not working because they don't get the subtext, because it's not making sense, and so then they'll dog on people for saying, well, it's more subtle than that. You've got to watch the movie a couple times and really think about it to get it. I think this can go the other direction too, right? Where people will say, well, no, it's not there. And it's like, well, yeah, it really is there. It's just that it takes a little bit of thinking, and again, it's just a matter of what film exactly are we talking about.
Now, I know you haven't seen Red State, but there was, I think it was Kevin Smith, Burn in Hell's what it's called, and he talked about his process of making Red State. He was really thinking about film as art and trying to be artistic, and when you're trying to be artistic, you're trying to leave things up to interpretation. And I guess what I'm trying to say by referencing that is, it's sort of a noble deed to try to create art. It's a noble deed to set forth to make something that you have to think deeper about. That being said, I think sometimes people make things that they didn't consider everything when they started, and they really have plot and structure problems when they're structural problems, and that structural problems, plot problems, are not left up to interpretation. They're things that either should or should not be in your movie.
I don't think people should try to make art. I think when we're talking about narrative medium, I think if people should try to tell a story. And the way that you go about telling that story should have everything to do with the kind of story that it is. I really think that. If you're telling a story that at its core, at its essence, it's a parody, it's a farce, it doesn't have to be art to be great.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying? Because again, it goes back to intent. What is the intent? So I think that it's way too much of a broad goal to sit down and go, I'm going to create art, because I don't think that starting from that point that you have that you have an idea. You just want you want to make something that is artistic. I think that you have to be inspired to make art. Art is inspired. Art is not forced. So I don't think you can try to make art. I think you can be inspired to make art.
Well said.
Hey, thanks, pal.
I mean, I think it's a noble effort to appreciate art for what it is and want to make art. But that does not necessarily mean that you made something good.
Yeah, and I also think that there are definitely examples, let me say this really quick, of films where one person might think that the subtext is heavy-handed or there isn't any, and another person thinks that it's quite good, and where the line is difficult to see, it's somewhat invisible, and that's why that's why we have these discussions. That's why people have opinions. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You can't. It's not always so cut and dry. So,
what was it Lex Luthor said? Some people can read War and Peace and think it's a simple adventure story. Other people can read a gum wrapper and unlock the secrets to the universe, or something to that effect.
No, that's absolutely right. All right. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, BRNIN8R47. I was wondering what your thoughts are on rewatchability. Ironically, Brandon and I just put up a GNN today on this very topic. Are some movies or books better if only experienced one time? Do some movies or books need to be experienced multiple times to really appreciate them? Excuse me. What movies and books have you rewatched or reread and the experience was radically different the second time? So, Brandon and I did a topic that wasn't exactly this. You haven't seen that video yet. Have you? I just put it up today. Okay, I was asking you if you'd seen it yet.
No.
Where we touched on rewatchability, but mostly what it was about was the phenomenon of seeing movies for like the 400th time and still seeing something in it that you didn't notice the first time, and this goes into that a little bit. So I think it's cool that this question came up, because now you get to weigh in on it a little bit. So do you think that the thing that I picked up the most in this was this question? Do you think that there are movies that that your viewing of it is tainted, or it hurts it if you do watch it more than one time?
I feel like certain circumstances can make a movie better than it is. I feel like certain circumstances, or I feel like there are some films that need to be viewed under certain circumstances. And I do have examples for both. Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Not a terrific movie. No, it's not. I'll admit. But I saw it with a group of friends at a particular time that it was just perfect for me to enjoy that movie and then enjoy watching it again, because it brings up feelings of that camaraderie that I had with those people that I saw it with.
Can I tell you something really quick?
Sure.
Brandon and I actually brought up you in one of your examples for this, and that was Paranormal Activity, which was a movie that you loved that a lot of people don't like as much now because you saw it at the right time.
Right.
Just like what you're talking about. You saw it before it was wide release. You saw it before the hype. And I have, in contrast, mentioned movies to you or talked to you about movies that you probably would have had a deep experience with if you'd seen it before all that hype.
Exactly. I mean, the hype made Memento less interesting to me. Still a great movie. I enjoyed it quite a lot, but I didn't walk. And same thing with Fight Club. I didn't walk away with it with that big emotional reaction that everybody had. And
it's so weird that this question's here, because Brandon and I kept going, man, I wish Vince was here for this.
The other example I have forgotten.
Oh, I'm sorry, Vince. I wanted to bring that up in case it didn't come up.
You have to see it under certain circumstances. Incredibles. Incredibles, still a good movie. I like that movie quite a lot. But there are moments in that movie that you have to see for... I mean, it only has its impact if you see it with a group of people for their first time.
You think?
Yeah. That moment at the end...
I know you always said that, but I didn't have that with it.
Near the end of the movie, when they have a moment of silence right after that kid sees a bunch of stuff happen, it says, "That was totally wicked!" And then when you watch it by yourself, or with a very small group of people who have already seen it, nobody laughs. Or they go... And then you notice that there's just silence during the movie. And it feels strange. It doesn't have that impact that it did when you first saw it.
See, I think that's only because you had an audience that cracked up during that part.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? So like in your mind, that's supposed to be there.
Yeah,
because you saw it that way. That's really interesting.
If I were to see it in a movie theater with a bunch of Scrooges, I mean,
yeah,
no, I'm not going to laugh at this now.
I think that this is something that we don't talk about nearly enough, and maybe this is the right time to address it. The idea that your perception of something that you see is very much affected by who you see it with, how you watch it. I think even the size you see it on sometimes. I mean, like the place you go to, how tired you are when you see all these sorts of things affect it, and it's so difficult to have an objective viewpoint about these sorts of things. And of course, you're always going to have somewhat of a subjective point of view. We've always said that, and I talked about. I've talked about this some with a lot of friends who some who disliked Dark Knight Rises a lot more than I did, and some who liked it a lot more than I did, and I discovered that a lot of it with that movie in particular seemed to depend on the audience that they saw it with. The first time I saw Rises, when I did a pretty negative review on it and didn't like it very much, I saw it with a crowd of people that was silent almost through the entire movie, and I looked around and I kept getting this weird vibe that people were bored and unsettled the whole movie, and it made me kind of that way, And then when I went and saw it again, it was a bit of a different experience because the crowd wasn't like that. And then when I watched it by myself, I liked it a whole lot more. Like, that was a movie I needed nobody in the room to be able to enjoy. So weird, right? And this is a phenomenon that we've experienced in my Star Trek Club a lot, where the people will have episodes that they vehemently dislike, see it with the group, suddenly they like it. Really interesting.
Just a, I guess, final thought for me.
Yeah, sure, man.
I like watching movies, again, that have a lot of effect on me. There are movies that I feel like need to be watched more than once to catch everything, which is something that is, to be said for the filmmaker. Good job, you made a movie that deserves rewatching and rethinking about. But sometimes there's just a movie that's cool that makes me feel like I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to watch Dredd again just because it was so much fun and so twisted. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why people go watch Rocky Horror Picture Show every Halloween. I mean, it's because of the experience, not because it's a movie that's
critically good. Yeah.
And you don't necessarily catch
Although I
think
Dredd was critically good.
Yeah, I do too. But I want to watch Dredd again because it was so much fun.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. That's why I don't care how much the third act of 89 falls apart. I'm still going to enjoy watching it every time I watch it.
There are movies that are fun that you want to go see that are good. Like I would say Fight Club and American Psycho. You want to rewatch these because they're fun.
I don't know about Fight Club being fun. The first time,
I'm a weird guy, I'll admit.
The first time I saw Fight Club, that's what's so weird about that movie. I know this movie keeps coming up in these discussions. I apologize for anybody that's irritating. But Vince wasn't with me and Brandon that last video where we talked about it. But that movie, no, it's cool. That movie, the first time I saw it, I didn't like it at all. And I had to see it again, knowing the twist at the end, before I really appreciated it and actually enjoyed it. But that movie made me uncomfortable, you know. But it's supposed to. But that doesn't make it fun. I don't know.
I mean, I watched the movie knowing what the ending was.
No, I know you did.
So,
yeah.
I guess I have a different frame of reference for it.
Oh, completely. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do, like, 2 more real quick. Divid22. Do you think Superman... do you think if Superman had stayed the man of the energy, he would have been better off in the long run, character-wise and storytelling? Well, this is easy. No, I don't.
I didn't read much of that.
Personally.
But.
I just thought it was kind of hokey. I don't know. I don't think that there was much character stuff really done with him. I mean, there were some attempts when they split him off into Superman Red and Superman Blue and doing some kind of weird dichotomy stuff between those 2 characters, because for a while he was 2 different people. But just the whole, you know, him, I'm assuming when you say man of the energy, you're talking about the you know, late 90s, him in the, you know, being pure energy with the silly energy suit. I didn't understand why they felt the need to try to make him so different from what he had always been for 60-something years, and I felt like it was really kind of just a gimmick because they were out of ideas of Superman. I mean, I always felt that about it.
I don't necessarily think that they thought they were out of ideas so much as they were like, well, we need to make it fresh, we need to make it new.
Yeah, because they were because they were out of ideas.
Well, fair enough.
What you don't realize is that I read some of the stories between Death of Superman, and then they were out of ideas. I mean, there's not much that worked.
You know, if what you're saying is you like Superman, Man of Energy, maybe what they should have done is...
that would have been a great title for that book, too. They should have called it that. Superman, Man of Energy.
Yeah. Or Man of Electricity, or something like that. I think what, you know, maybe they could even have, like, a little spark of something.
You said spark.
A little spark of something still exists somewhere, and it grows into a Superman energy being.
Like another one.
Yeah, which they've already kind of done with a character like Metamorpho. A part of him, you know, grew into something else, which I forget what that character's name is. But, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing another character added to the supergroup. I mean, why not?
Let's do one more real quick. The production Trinity. Does a bad reboot make the previous franchise seem worse, or a good reboot make the previous franchise seem better? I think a good reboot generally makes the previous franchise seem worse. Yeah. I don't know if I've experienced this phenomenon, that a reboot that's not good would make the other franchise also not seem good anymore. I think it for me, it almost enhances that other franchise. Or if we're just talking about like a remake of a movie, where like you know when they remake movies and I don't like the remake, a lot of the time I kind of go in expecting it's probably not going to be a very good remake, so it's not like it taints the first one. It's not like if they remade Back to the Future, I'd suddenly be like, I don't like that anymore. Like,
yeah, I would agree. I mean, really, I have nothing to say. I like the older movie, regardless of what the reboot is. If they have a crappy movie in the franchise, in that particular continuity, then it kind of makes me think back on some of the other ones, like, oh, they were building towards this? Like, why did we have a setup movie that seemed like it was really good, and then have a sequel to it that was crappy? Why did I watch the setup to get to here? But
and I'm not sure about the flip of that either, as he says, the idea that you might watch a good reboot and then like the original even more, because a lot of the time if the reboot is really good, then your natural tendency is to go, okay, that's what they should have done in the first place. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time.
Look at how many people unfairly judged *89 based on Batman Begins being terrific. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. It's not like it's
They're
not
two
like
different beasties.
It's not like a lot of people say, you know what, but then he's kind of got a point, because I think seeing such a different Batman made me not appreciate *89 better, but just kind of renew my appreciation for it. Where I was like, look, you can do this in about 50 different interesting ways. You know, I mean, like, and like, you know, all these new versions of Batman, be they live action or animated or what have you, haven't. And I know know we differ on this, but have never in any way whatsoever tainted my opinion of Adam West Batman. It's always been what it is to me. So,
well, I never liked '89 Batman, or not. Oh, excuse me.
No. I know you didn't like Adam West Batman, but you know what I mean. Like none of that would have ever changed my opinion. Where it's like, you know, suddenly Nolan does it his way. I'm not gonna suddenly be like, oh yeah, and Adam West, because it's such a different thing. It's not even like at that point, it's almost like Batman in that font with the yellow bat behind it, and then like Nolan's Batman with his Batman font, or then like Tim Burton's Batman with their Batman font. It's almost like 3 different words to me. It's like Batman, Batman, Batman. They're like different words.
You know, it's a lot of this stuff is taste.
Maybe that's stupid, but that's how I feel about it.
You know, I have a friend that only likes Adam West Batman, which fair enough, whatever. He just doesn't care for the newer ones. I have a friend that...
How old is he?
It's, what, 20... He's 27.
Okay, that's amazing. I thought for sure you were going to say 50.
I think that's Terrell.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, I knew Terrell was a big fan of 60s Batman, but I didn't realize that he didn't like any other Batman. That's really interesting.
I don't think...
Terrell and I have very similar tastes. He and I have had long Star Trek conversations. Like, we've got really similar tastes.
I think what
Except
he said to
he
me was it
horror,
gets
and
progressively worse. Yeah. His 60s Batman's where it was the best, and then 89 Batman's a step down, and then Batman Begins ruins it. So...
Oh, well, okay, so we don't have similar tastes at all. We just both happen to like Adam West, and we both happen to like Star Trek. All right.
You guys have very similar TV tastes, but not necessarily similar movie tastes.
Well, anyway, Vince, we're out of time, and actually, I think we're way out of time. So we will bid everybody adieu, and we'll be back with you once again next week with I think our final part of round 3 of the multi-topic extravaganza, and then after that, we will continue taking your questions for full-on videos. And I gotta tell you, some of these have been really interesting, really insightful questions, and we're likely to come back to these. To some of these and maybe do fleshed out full videos on some of these topics. I think we could probably get a whole year's worth of GNNs out of what we have here, and we just sat here and answered them. But I think there is more to say about some of this stuff. So maybe some podcasts, maybe some GNNs. Anyway, we want to thank everybody for thinking and for giving us interesting things to talk about. And this has been a lot of fun, and that's why we've done more videos on this one, because we're just having a blast with it. So
yeah.
So thanks, everybody, a great deal for watching. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you again next week. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince, reminding you to support your local multi-comic extravaganza.
Extravaganza.
Yes.
Oh, you said that on purpose.
Yes, I did.
Okay, that was amazing. You made it through that. I'm quite impressed, actually. I was gonna correct you. I was like, extravaganza. God, you messed up. Okay, that's hilarious.
I was like, hey, don't mess this up. Don't mess this up. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. See you later. Vince, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think so, Cap. But how do you get clowns to shave their legs?
Well, I'm not sure, but what I was thinking is, I think our viewers should join the Geeks United Club.
The Geeks United Club? That's a terrific idea. When they join, they get lots of stuff.
Do they really? Can you jog my memory?
Stuff like this handy-dandy manila envelope in which we ship all your stuff.
That's pretty cool, but it's not the coolest part. They also get this DVD that has 2 full hours of their favorite Geekvolution content. They get to pick what videos go on here, and they also get a custom episode of Geeks Not Nerds just from us to them.
That's pretty cool. They also get a Geeks United membership card on which they can put their name and check as to whether or not they will be a Logan Tier or a Doomsayer.
You know, I would check Logan Tier, but that would make me a fan of myself.
I think I'm gonna check Logan Tier because I like to be unpredictable.
Fair enough. They also get a random comic from the Comic Vault. Now, the Comic Vault is very vast and ominous, and that means that the chances of you getting this particular comic are not that great, but it could be anything. It might be this, but it might be all kinds of other comics, too.
We also have a much longer publication in the form of Captain Logan's novel, The Girl with 7 First Names. It is a comedic science fiction novel. Check it out.
They also get this letter from Doomsvent. I've read it. It's appalling.
He's hugely insulting. Oh, they get one more thing.
Oh, what's that, Vince?
They can request a rewind.
Or a Vince Versus.
Ooh.
Yeah, for us to review sometime during the next year or so. And you get all of that for $20, Vince.
$20? That's a lot of entertainment, folks.
Yeah, all you gotta do is go to wearegeeksnotnerds.com and click on the Geekvolution store, or you can just go to the link in the description of this video.
It's a great idea.
We'll see you on your envelope.